Okay, everybody, today I'm going to show you how I start this gigantic worm creature from scratch. So we're going to go over the 3 different silhouettes that I used, and we're going to be discussing 4 major problems that beginner artists have, and that is confusing or weak silhouette, anatomy that doesn't support the design, shading that flattens the form, and texture applied without purpose. Okay, get your pens and pencils ready, get your sketchbooks ready, get your caffeine ready, sit up straight, because we got a good lesson today. All right, let's jump in. So when we get started in creature design, the driving force is going to be your silhouettes, your thumbnail sketches. So what I'm going to do for this particular lesson today is do 3 different thumbnail sketches. These are going to be loose, and these don't have to be fancy, anybody. Now, when you do these thumbnails, allow your hand to move freely across the page. Explore the shapes. You don't have to know exact anatomy or anything. You know, if you see a bug that you like in a photograph, combine different bugs. You know, that's one of the most fun things about creature design, is that you can combine animals. So one method that I like to give students is take 3 animals that you know would not exist in the same biome. All right, take a desert dwelling animal, and then all of a sudden take something from the jungle, and then take something from the sea. And when you combine those, it could be all kinds of different combinations. Okay, so let me write this down for you guys real quick. So you have your primary, secondary, and tertiary. Tertiary being the smallest. Primary is the biggest influence in the body, and then you have the animal that you would choose for the secondary influence, and then the tertiary. This feels good to go back to these lessons. I haven't done them for a while in my my channel here, but you pick the main silhouette. Okay, so like let's say a buffalo. Okay, and then you do a rabbit, and then all of a sudden for the tertiary you pick an arapaima. Okay, arapaima fish. So then you would find the combination of like what you would invent using the different animals. Okay, but anyway, let's go back to our little worm creature here. Now remember, this is a thumbnail, so we're not spending a lot of time on this. We're just getting a basic silhouette. So that is a perfect segue in talking about today's lesson. Mistake number 1, confusing or weak silhouette. So when we sketch creatures and we're trying to make something just look awesome, the silhouette of it, or the outer edge, like the shape that we see first before the details, that is going to make or break whether or not the creature is readable. If it looks a little off, you know, there needs to be a clear read from a distance. And also the silhouette, you need to avoid it being overly complex and overly symmetrical in outlines. All right, so when we're doing these silhouettes, you have to think about, do the shapes blend together? That's the big thing, everybody. Are the shapes blending together? Or, you know, are you trying to make these shapes look cool and then they end up, it's like you're putting a cat head on an elephant body. It's just not going to work. You know, that happens sometimes. I mean, heck, I still do it. And I have to catch myself from designing just weird, non-anatomically correct creatures. Okay, this one is just nuts because it kind of looked like a slug at first, and now it's just looks like an overweight worm. Don't know. This one up here kind of looks like a hellgrammite. You don't know what a hellgrammite is? Look it up. It's the larva stage before it turns into a Dobson fly. I think they're amazing, and I talk about them a lot in my mentorships too for folks that want to do creature design. Just nature is just really, really awesome and terrifying at the same time. Okay, I don't want to obsess about this one, but despite this one having cool looking pincers. I don't know what it is about that, but it kind of reminds me of the Blob, the Creature, and the Faculty. If you've seen the Faculty, like early 2000s, Elijah Wood, like all the old schoolers. Let's move on. Let's do a third one. So I'm not going to be satisfied. I never even told you guys what I'm drawing today for the lesson. We're doing worms. Just disgusting, gross worms. And this is going to be so much fun. Another mistake that I like to point out as we have ourselves a little adventure with this sketch is anatomy that doesn't support the design. So this is a big thing to really study and to really make sure that you guys are correcting if you find yourself in this trap. Have you ever sketched a creature and instead of knowing the anatomy or knowing what you want to do with it, you just decorate it? And I've gone over this in my previous lessons too, where you decorate instead of showing evolution. Anatomy that doesn't support the design. Once we get out of this thumbnail stage and we actually work on a final, that's when we're really going to get into the four main problems that we face in creature design. Okay, remember, these are just quick silhouettes. Look at the legs coming out of there. That is gross. I wonder what kind of legs those actually should be. Like if this thing were to walk around, it could be like a spine right here. I've never really seen a worm with a fin on it. That would be kind of cool. Like an aquatic worm that lives on land and water. Oh man, now we got something from here. Outside of the creature. I don't know what the feet look like per se, but I'm really intrigued by this one. And I can already tell that out of these three, I mean, that was a good warm up. This one was kind of meh. But this one, I think I found it. Which was the goal, right? We're doing these thumbnail sketches, and we hope to land on the one that we're excited about the most. Hey, that actually reminds me. So if you guys are drawing and you don't get excited, let's say you're on thumbnail number 9, 10, 20, and you still are just looking at them going, these suck. It's okay. Everybody's journey to have a good design is different. You don't have to have the perfect design your first go around in the first round of thumbnail sketches. That's ridiculous. Like sometimes, yes, we hit a home run and we all wish that happens every time, but it's not. It's not going to happen. All right. I've worked in games before where, we would be designing an alien creature that had to live in a desert biome, okay? And I'm looking at reference, and I'm just like, is it going to look like a bearded dragon? Is it going to look like a meerkat? Like, I don't know what is going on. And 15 thumbnails later, and we still haven't found it. And I would go even further than that and say, we did find it, and I did a rendering, and everything was fleshed out. And then all of a sudden, the art director was like, nope, let's keep going. So that's the part of the job people don't realize is you have to take your emotion out of it. You can't become too emotionally invested in your designs. It's hard. I know everybody. It's so hard, especially when you have that one piece in your portfolio you kind of know sucks and it's like 8 years old, but you don't want to get rid of it because you just are emotionally attached to it and it's a terrible, awful piece. Yeah, take it out. That's for like a portfolio review kind of video. We'll talk about that at a later time. Oh man, look at this dirty thing. Okay, well, it's not complete till we number them. You don't have to number them. I like to number them just for my own sanity, and also if we want to pick some designs out or aspects from different ones later, then we can do that. Maybe I'll give this one a chance, but I don't see anything remotely striking about that. I mean, I'll give it some credit though. The front is interesting. It's not like your typical worm. And now that I'm going through this, this is why I have to give all of my thumbnails a chance, and all of you guys give your thumbnails a chance too. You're not always going to see something pretty at first, okay? You have to imagine that every thumbnail that you do is a diamond in the rough, okay? So if it's really hideous at first, it just looks like a hairball and you don't really know what's happening, that's okay, because you can always come back to it. These porcupine quills coming off the back here. Didn't expect that. There we go. This is why I like pen. Pen is not my favorite. Obviously, pencils are, but ballpoint pens are so much fun because every single line never gets a flat spot on the graphite, and therefore the lines always stay crisp. You just have to be confident enough to apply those lines. That's all. Okay, there's the bottom. Okay. I'll give number 2 a chance here. And after this stage, I'm going to show you guys how to evaluate this. And then over here, we're going to do a detailed worm. And it's going to be gross. And you guys are going to help me. Speaking of help, check the links in the description below for our Creature Design Workshop Discord. It's free to join the Discord, and we have monthly creature design challenges. I'll give a prompt on the first of every month, and you have a full month to come up with something based on the prompt. And if you need help with it, like I was mentioning, you can always ask for feedback. And we also have sketchbook threads. Back in the day, there was conceptart.org. Those of you that remember that forum that was online, it's unfortunate what happened to it. But, I try to bring some of that magic back with the creature design. And if you want feedback on your work from industry professionals, from artists that are more experienced than you that might bring some good advice, we encourage that too. And it's also a safe, clean place. We definitely filter out, we take it very seriously. We filter out any nonsense. Okay, any nonsense, any bullying, anything like that is not tolerated, and it is eliminated within an hour if found. Okay, this is absolutely disgusting. It looks like DNA just decided to run amok with this thing, and I'm just going to put a horn on here just because. A worm with a horn. So there we go, folks. A genetic mishap in the evolution of our exotic, chaotic worm. I still like number 3. All right. We are going to move over here, and I'm going to show you how we can build our worm creature based on what we have here. Come on the journey with me. All right, so I've listed over here the 4 main things we're going to talk about today. Confusing or weak silhouette, anatomy that doesn't support the design, shading that flattens the form, and texture applied without purpose. So, where do we start? If we don't want to do all these, where do we start? Well, let's look up here. Confusing or weak silhouette. Now, when we're looking at our 3 thumbnail sketches over here, and I'm going to be choosing number 3, I want to make sure that silhouette is not weak. So one of the main ways to do it is imagine the creature being in a video game already or a movie. Now, I like that stance that it's in, so I'm going to use that. I'm going to start very, very lightly. And when I do this, I want to make sure that I keep that wispiness of the body. Remember, guys, when you're doing stuff for or with a pen, these lines are down. Keep everything super light. And if you're doing this with a pen, that's okay. If you're doing this with a pen, just be careful that you don't go too dark at first. I often get asked, how do I sketch with a pen and it doesn't bleed? Well, I got a couple answers. 1, quit buying bad pens. Just throw them out. If they're old and that ink has dried at the tip, make sure that you just open your sketchbook. Look what I do here. See these little circles? I just do this. I get everything loosened up inside the pen, and then I draw. It can't get any more straightforward than that. If it still bleeds, you're either pushing too hard or it's a brand that maybe isn't that good. Okay, I'm using a Bic round stick, and these things are classic. They've been around for decades, and they're great. And you know, you'll get a bad one in the litter at some point, but you know, for the most part, they're great. Confusing or weak silhouette. Have purpose with it. I know that this creature is going to bite, and it's going to bite really hard. So I'm just going to put some pincers in here. Right, like this. Now, I definitely want an oval where I believe the head is going to go. I haven't committed to anything, and I'm using this as reference, but I don't have to rely on this to have, you know, all of these lines exact. Okay, it looks like there's double the amount of sharp mandibles inside here. See how light that I'm being, and I'm also trying to outline my creature too. The outline is everything. Whenever I'm drawing worm-like creatures that have some kind of pincer or mandibles that poke out, I want to make sure that these shapes are actually readable and they have a purpose. So inside here on the pincer, it's serrated like a knife edge. So if you study bugs, you know, like stag beetles and any kind of beetle, really, even carpenter ants, you'll see the different serrated edges on all those pincers, and it helps them form, it helps them gnaw on leaves and sticks and whatever else that they can get their mouths onto. But anyway, I want to make sure that the silhouette is going to be readable. So I'm really trying to think about the underlying anatomy and bumps and ridges that look like there's a skull underneath it, some kind of bone structure. Could it be an invertebrate? Maybe. But you know, looking over here, I have some legs coming off, and I have a big fin right there. So I want to make sure that that looks awesome too. There we go. And I'm just going to put in some of those weird those little legs on the side. They're not really like insect legs, but it's almost like, I forget what animal it is. Or they're almost like small little arms without fingers. This is why I love pen. This is so much fun because you can get very light with these and also dark immediately. Notice how I have not shaded anything. All I've done was give a nice dark outline to the bottom. Now, why am I doing it for the bottom? It's because, you know, that's shadow, that's the point of contact that it's making for the ground. So I want to make sure that I take that into consideration. This big giant pincer that's coming out of the head here. Notice how I have this big lump inside that head. That's because that the pincer is coming from that head. Okay, so it's growing under there, and I got to make sure that I honor that anatomy. And we'll get into the anatomy in a minute because, you know, number 2 is anatomy that doesn't support the designs. But right now I'm trying to give it a good silhouette. So if I were to look at this creature from 30, 40, 50 feet away, if you're playing it in a video game, can you still see what kind of creature it is? This is why World of Warcraft and StarCraft, Diablo, Doom even, games like that where they have creatures, you can still tell what they are even if you look at them from afar, and symbols, and even from your television set or your computer screen far away. All right, so now that you see how I'm building this, we're going to fast forward a little bit. Well, not fast forward. I want to have a fun little drawing session with you guys. So each lesson that I try to give, you know, we'll put on some relaxing music and you can draw along with me. You can see all the details that I'm putting in here. And later on, we're going to be doing some time lapse as well. All of these tiny little wrinkles that I'm putting in here, you know, I'll go over that, but I just want to make sure that these large shapes on the outside are readable. The center line I'm going to have to put in here. Center line is everything, folks, because if you want your creature to have any kind of a spine, backbone, whatever, or if you just want your creature to have decent symmetry, this is the way to do it. Now I'm going based off this. Now it's probably going to change as I move over here with it, and that's okay. I don't know if I want the fin to come all the way down on the head because this might be open. I don't know what types of teeth or mouth this thing is going to have yet. So I'm just going to do an outline of where I want that fin to go. And I want to make sure it's simple, but yet readable. I just did a wireframe for it. So this is the top crest of the fin, and it's bending around. So very lightly, I'm going to indicate where some ribbing can be within that fin. Look how light that is, everybody. Very light. So light, in fact, that like you zoomed out, you could barely see it, and that's the way it should be. And then once we get something that's decent, then we can start putting in some details. And that's when the fun really starts. All right, there we go. Okay, so if you're doing this with a pencil, sharpen your pencils right now. All right, and I want you to take a step back and enjoy this quiet little drawing session that we're about to do. And I want you to watch as I build the silhouette on the side. So I'll be doing the outline first. I'm not doing a ton of detail. There's going to be no shading whatsoever inside here yet. We'll get into that in a minute because we have to talk about shading that flattens the form, and you don't want that. All right, let's go. So when it comes to creepy crawlies, and we're talking about anatomy that should support the design that you're doing, I want to keep things simple. Now, the legs on the outside, I designed basically to help it move along. That's the only reason why these appendages exist on the side. Now, being a creature designer, you have the liberty of inventing the shapes of them and how they look. Go crazy with them. This creature obviously doesn't exist on Earth, but make it to where it could. And that is, look at all of the worm-like creatures, centipedes even, we have millipedes and ancient like insects and arthropods and everything that has lived on Earth. Look at the fossils and look at how scientists believe that they crawled across the ground. With this particular creature, there are two main sets of anatomical features. We have the fin, and I'm thinking, well, it probably can swim and also use the fin to regulate body temperature. And then two, the legs on the outside. Now, yes, the pincers technically could be three. That's like the main threat that we have here. If you're trying to attack it or you don't want to get bitten, avoid those at all costs. Actually, I think that perspective's off a little bit. There we go. I try to sketch in my perspective lines here. Very lightly, by the way. So if you're doing this with pen or pencil, just sketch some perspective lines across here. Make sure that they go to the correct vanishing point in the distance. Anyway, here we go. All right, so just some things to watch out for. Limbs attached in impossible ways, joints bending incorrectly, and muscles not supporting weight or motion. This thing is ground-based. All right, it's going to be trudging on the ground and crawling. So for the muscles supporting the weight, we at least want to make sure that the legs are spread out to grip the ground on the outside, because the whole belly of this thing is touching the ground. All right, now if it has to swim, it could probably use those tiny little legs to help it move along, but it's more of a land-based creature than anything else. Okay, now, the third thing, we're going to talk about shading that flattens the form, okay? And we can probably talk about shading that flattens the form and texture applied without purpose at the same time. I could spend hours just filling in all these little wrinkles and bumps, which, I would definitely do, because the anatomy is pretty much given to me. It's a slimy surface. There's not a lot going on, but it does have some protections. We're going to do like little bumps and like maybe hard bony shapes coming off here. But you want to make sure that there's purpose to this texture. All right, now this thing, I don't want to put a lot of scales on it, but instead it's going to be a slippery, slimy, amphibious type of texture. Okay, and when it comes to shading, especially with a ballpoint pen, you're going to have to be a little bit slower and more methodical with this. If you're an impatient artist, it's going to backfire immensely. I like to grip the pen at the tip. You want to tilt the pen so that the tip is not straight down. If you put it straight down, it's going to apply all the ink. You want to apply the least amount of ink possible when you shade with the ballpoint pen. It's not like a pencil where you can turn the pencil to the side and it's sharp and you just get like a bigger shaded stroke. No. Not like that with a ballpoint. So you turn it to the side a little bit and you don't press hard, and you do tiny controlled lines going back and forth. Notice how I'm going directly over those little wrinkles that I drew, all right? Because the shading comes before the details. I only put the wrinkles in there to give me a placeholder for them. That's it. Those aren't the final wrinkles or anything else you see in there. Now, I'm going to turn my sketchbook and I'm going to hit this at another angle. I'm not going to press harder. You have to be methodical about this and you really have to concentrate. More so than you would with pencil. There we go. Look at this area right in here. You see how that took care of itself? Just like a pencil. I could easily Go over this 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 passes, 20 passes even, depending on how adventurous I'm feeling, okay? But we're going to be building this up slowly. Now, all these little markings that I'm putting right here, this pincer and the anatomy underneath the skin that the pincer is growing, it's growing from the skeleton or whatever type of cartilage is under there. I have to make sure that that looks rounded and not flat. Well, guess what, guys? What kind of surface is this? Kind of spherical, kind of cylindrical. It gets a core shadow, doesn't it? So we're just going to make sure that I apply a smooth coating of pen. Okay, and I'm going to turn this. Maybe push a little harder to kind of fill in those gaps. I'm still not satisfied. Patience. Take a deep breath. If you find yourself wanting to skip steps, take a deep breath and build this up slowly. You're going to thank yourself. See that ridge right there where it's light on our left and dark on our right? And there's this line going through here, almost like a line. You could take care of that. Go to that line. Here, let me turn the sketchbook up like this. This is how you fix it with pen. At a specific angle, whatever is most comfortable for your hand, you're going to go over the dark and light part, right on top of that line. And you're going to go back over it and over it and over it, back and forth, right like this. Don't press hard. You're going to turn your paper and you're going to do the same thing at a different angle. Now, depending on how close the strokes are together, you can fill up the area quicker. So I would say looks like 3 passes it's going to be. So that looks a little better. I'm trying to get an angle that I did not go before. Okay, now we don't have to get rid of that line because technically that's where the core shadow is going to be, but we smoothened it out a little bit. Now for the core shadow, we're going to press a little harder. We have to look at what the shape is doing. Everybody take a step back. If you find yourself following along with me and you have a body part on your creature that is rounded, figure out what the surface is doing before you shade. Because the shading, it's only there to define what you want. And you have to know what shape it is. Since this is rounded and it looks like it's not a perfect cylinder, there's like some lumps in there where there's muscle. That's okay. For the most part, it is rounded. So I'm just going to indicate where that core shadow is on the side. Right, like that. Okay, see how dark that got? That's okay. Because remember the technique that I showed you before where we just go over the dark in the middle part and then we kind of even it out? That's what's going to happen. It's just more controlled this time. So let's take a closer look at this together. So one of the most fun things about sketching with a pen is I love the cross-hatched look that the pen strokes give. It's different than a pencil. It offers that really neat, almost comic book feel. But for this one, I want to make sure that everything is as even as possible. So it's going to take a little bit of methodical maneuvering, I like to call it. And there's going to be some pen strokes in there where it was kind of unexpectedly dark. That's okay. See this area back here where it's pretty dark? Honestly, folks, I'm not even going to touch that anymore. This is when discipline comes in. It's like I'm not going to touch that area because I'm going to end up overworking it. So let's start focusing on areas that need more work. Like, for example, the skin touching the pincer. What's happening right there? Well, I kind of like that sudden abrupt change in texture, just the fold. It's like the skin stops. There's no cuticle because it's not a nail. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to put maybe this thing molted at some point. Maybe the pincer itself is very old. Maybe this creature's hundreds of years old and new layers of pincer came through and the old stayed. And over time, we just see more of it. Okay, here's where the fun really starts. See the shaded area that I put here? lightly, I'm going to start putting in some wrinkles on top of the shading. And then that's when the magic happens, because all the shading was taken care of. Now look how cool this is. There's a lot of open space right here, a lot of blank page, just white showing and then some pen. And all of a sudden you have this one little concentrated area with detail. That, my friends, is your first foray into like fixed details. Okay, focusing on specific areas. So to go back and talk about this shaded area right here, you want to find the large forms first. All right, so this creature is basically a giant cylinder. Okay, so running across this body, even through back here in the torso, and then it's wrapping around back here, it's going to have a core shadow across the whole thing. When you think about that coupled with light logic, so we need to establish that light source. We need to figure out where the details are going to be coming from, but also how they hit, how the light hits it. A lot of times beginners won't think about lighting. They'll just start shading randomly. It's kind of like young comic book artists, like aspiring comic book artists, when they'll just start inking shadows in areas where the shadows wouldn't exist. If you're inking something, the area where the ink is placed, like the jet black areas, that's the exact same area that normal shade of like value would happen. So we need to think about that, the light source. And then the details that are sitting on here, the little wrinkles and such, this is really important. I'm going to keep this light at first. This is when you can really start to build up some awesome details for your critter. I like putting little darker lines down here for the shadows, or just a good outline for the creature. Now I'm also going to be putting a cast shadow on the floor or the ground, so the creature won't be floating, which is another one that's I'm probably going to give a bonus lesson on floating creatures. All right, stop making your creatures floating. Give them a ground to walk on. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be grass, mud, dirt, gravel. Doesn't matter. Oh yeah, now my favorite part of any kind of creature design is always the mouth. I love it. I love it. I love it. Sharp teeth. But I want to make sure that the anatomy here is at least doable, okay? Especially in between the teeth. So we got these big mandibles on the side, and each one of those will have its own set of ligaments and tendons. It's kind of like a claw. We want those to point inward so prey can not escape. I was using the example of just nature, the inside of the mouth on the leatherback sea turtle. Google that right now, and then comment below and let me know when you became horrified at looking at that. Definitely don't want to get bit by that. I would rather get bit by an alligator snapping turtle than a leatherback sea turtle. Because when you see those teeth, then you'll realize it. So, one of the coolest ways to be unpredictable and different with your creatures is asymmetry. This is something I've gone over in my previous lessons too. So when we're talking about, texturing, and we're going to be talking about that more in a second, like texturing and how you apply it with purpose. When you put these types of anatomical features in here, like the mouths and everything, you have to think about how this creature bites down. Are you just putting random demonic teeth poking up everywhere? No. I got these two large ones on both sides. Okay, the pincer is there to trap prey. That's why it has pincers. It's going to grab you. And everything in here is going to slowly devour you. It's going to push you into its mouth. All right, so we have these secondary ones that are going to keep you locked in. And then the tiny ones are going to act like a knife, basically. It's going to take you in there. Now, I don't want to have the typical circular worm mouth that we see. It's cool. I love the giant sandworms in Dune. Those rightfully had to have circular mouths. I get it. Just because of the shape of the body and everything. But this one is more like a lizard. And the bottom jaw, it's going to open and close similar to a lizard mouth. There we go. That's kind of fun. And I'm changing up the little directions inside the mouth here. This is why I love using pen, because I can just immediately get dark inside that mouth, but I'm not going to do it yet. I don't want to overcommit. And I also want the eye to rest. So I'm not just going to be putting random anatomical features in, like on the bottom here. See how there's a lot going on right there with the teeth, but all of a sudden it's kind of bare. It's just a chin, basically. That's what I want to do. If I were to put something, maybe tiny little protective hardened scales on the skin, other than that, nothing. And since repetition is one of the principles of design, I'm just going to repeat that design up here too. And I'm just going to make sure that it goes across the body and travels through the back. We want to give the illusion that this particular detail, this anatomical feature, is repeated. Speaking of that, so another way to make your creatures more believable when you're doing this is, finish the design off when you invent something. That is, if you're going to put a tentacle in there, put the tentacle on the other side of the head and then give a reason why that is there. Okay, continue that design aspect across everything. Whatever I design on the heads of these things, typically that type of detail is going to be repeated throughout the body. That's just how nature works. But hey, nature's different on other planets, right? All right, there we go. Up here as the body changes direction, I'm just going to put some shading. I mean, most of the tip it's mostly touching the paper and it's not the ink. There we go. We used to do this fun thing in grade school where we would take the pen and put it all the way to the side and run the tip of the pen across the page really fast for like a minute straight. And then you touch the tip and it's super hot. We were kids back then. We're just figuring out science and everything. And watch, all the kids that are going to watch this are going to be doing that in school. You didn't hear that from me. Okay. Now we are really cooking on these details. This is when things really start to come in play. And hopefully everybody's enjoying this, man. I love having you guys here. I learn a lot about you guys too, and the struggles that you have in school and learning art. And look, I read all comments, every single one. And if I don't get to you, if I don't get to answer back, it's not that I'm ignoring you. I'll try to at least give you a little heart. But I read some of those comments and suggestions on subject matter that I go over. And it's important to me because a lot of that stuff is awesome. And it's stuff that I haven't really thought of covering yet. I try my hardest to cover problems and trials and tribulations that people go through as an artist. Because remember, man, I was a beginner once too, and I know how that feels. Okay, so right here, I'm going to catch myself forgetting a major possible anatomical flaw. And I don't want to forget, and I want you to look at this right now and tell me what you think it's going to be. Okay. That shape, the whole pincer growing out of there, that shape is non-existent over there. So I caught myself. All right, so that means that all these scribbles over here, I'm just going to be drawing over them. It's a fatter head than I thought. So I'm just going to be traveling my pen over here, and it looks like that's going to be sticking out. Yeah, right there. Okay. Now I feel better. So now, whew, that was a close one, folks. We can kind of go back in here and add in that anatomy for the pincer growing up into that head. Okay, that looks much, much better. So what's going to happen is it's going to go up and over, flat head, up and over. And I'm going to put in some values over here. There we go. Okay. I'm not going to pay too much attention right now with, you know, the details on this side. This pincer is going to get most of the love, and that's what I want to do. I'm going to make sure that the shading and the wrinkles and everything look pretty decent in there. And I think I'm going to give some stretched skin to connect those two. Very lightly, I'm going to put in a little valley of shadow. Okay, there we go. And as I'm looking at this, I can't help but feel the need to put just one row of pretty sharp, I guess, spikes going down that. Now, this is a strategic choice. I'm not doing this just because I think it looks cool. This thing needs protection. This whole mandible, whole pincer area, this is just sticking out. It's one of the larger shapes. So in nature, typically the parts that stick out the most are going to require either the thickest skin for protection or the thickest scales or horns. Okay. So I just want to make sure that that is taken care of. I'm just going to put these little darkened spikes right there. And so what do I have to do? I'm going to go to the other side and I'm going to indicate, I'm going to make sure that these spikes are kind of leaning over just due to the shape. Another area I want to focus on is inside here in that mouth. I want to add some thickness to what I feel should be the gums. And then just indicate slightly where the bottom gums are. So there's going to be no fancy tongue, no stinger or anything coming out. Now the head here, this is going to be interesting because I want it to have a strong looking noggin, but also I don't want it to be almost, you know, too bumpy. The fin coming down here needs to stop at some point. This is the center line, so I'm just going to lightly brush in the edge. This is why establishing the center line is good, because that center line runs down right here through the mouse and it's going to curl back under the body. All right. I think that thing needs a little better of shape. There we go. Okay. So we have this like thick fleshy part. It's poking up right there. This is why I like going back over my pen strokes lightly. You can see them appear as I do that. Okay, and then the teeth, each tooth has a root. So you want to make sure that you show those roots and put in the necessary little shadows around them. Another reason why I like pen is because you can get dark right on the edges of these teeth. There we go. Okay. And wherever they get dark, you can put in some shadow right behind them for the inside of the mouth. We're not going to do that yet. Maybe a little bit right there. But I think for the most part, we're just going to leave it over here on the side. This is going to be in shadow. So's this. Because it's rounded and it's going underneath, it's lit from above. So you have to know what the light sources are doing, or light source, I should say, not sources. That's actually a big problem with artwork. Too many light sources. Pick a light source. How do I know this? Because I did it. I did it a lot. And it took me a while to figure that out. A lot of critiques, a lot of people telling me that my lighting was bad. Then I had to figure out how to fix that. Another thing I'm going to do, I'm going to go to the edge of this pincer, right like that, and I'm just going to darken the tip. Probably longer strokes are needed right down there. I'm never satisfied with how the tip looks on these things, so I'm just going to curl it up and make it look like a grabber pincer. And then I'm just going to stop because I don't really need to do anything else. All right. A lot of details are coming in, folks, and I'm focusing on the head. Notice how I've been on the head for a while. Mainly because the head, if I get the details in the head, it's going to establish a lot of things. It's going to establish the personality, the character, and it's going to actually help dictate the details that are going to happen on the rest of the body. And that's just what happens. So give yourself a focal point and really focus on that. So for me, the selling point for this creature is that head. That's what I want to sell all of you. Not for money, but the idea. I want to sell the idea that the face, if this were going to be in a game or a movie, the face is the first thing that you were going to see. It's the last thing a victim is going to see. And also, it's like the coolest part of the creatures most of the time that you're designing. You know, you want a cool looking face, right? You want a cool looking face, and what better to do that with than a disgusting worm with sharp teeth, right? I wouldn't even consider this a worm anymore. I don't know what it would be. Comment below. What would this actually be? You know, this thing is gross. Kind of combination of several animals. I think here we're kind of ready to put in some shading with a pen. I'm just not pressing hard. You can see the hatching happening, which is good. I'm just going to turn this slightly, and I'm going to do more of that. Okay, you can see how the gaps are being filled in. You can still see the crisscrossy, like the fence. I'm going to go a direction number 3, and I'm going to go in between that. There we go, and it took care of that. Now that kind of looks, that's pretty smooth. And I won't do any more. Okay. Get the top of the teeth there. Give it a nice little outline. There we go. Now they're really showing up. They're showing up, and we can clearly tell where the teeth are versus the inside of the mouth that we have not shaded yet. I hope that you all are having so much fun with this. I'm having a blast. I love teaching you guys about this. I have a Patreon, which is, it dives deeper into the anatomy and how I invent it. I show how I invent it, and I show the references that I look at, you know, for games and movies and whenever I want to work with clients. So if you're interested in that, just check the link in the description and also the pinned comment, and you can subscribe. You can even join my Patreon for free. You know, if you decide not to pledge and you just want to join for free, I got stuff in there for free. Freebie stuff and sketches and pictures of the inside of the books that I'm studying. So all kinds of stuff. A lot of fun. Okay, so the side here, here's the interesting thing, everybody. I got a lot of shading right here, right in this area. I don't want to do it over there, okay, because I already shaded that mandible. So the contrast showing up quite nicely. So maybe the light source is coming at an angle. So I kind of want to put more of the details right in here. We're really going all out on this. You guys can really see me build up these wrinkles. I'm pressing harder in certain areas, releasing the pressure in other areas. Keeping things super light. And I'm still having fun with this. This is the part when adding details is fun because your underlying structure, like the large shape, is already taken care of. Remember that core shadow that we put right there? Okay, that's why we've only focused on this area. This fleshy bit, I mean, check this out. See this kind of guitar pick shape right here? That's a part that comes up over the head. That would actually get a core shadow. Not a big one. You know, I can start shading in some shadows right there. You know, I'll go at a different angle. And then maybe it'll have like a slight little ridge where the shadow is going to run across this, just a little darker than the other areas, because you can have a little valley here where there's wrinkles. And now you could see like another little core shadow happening, and it makes it look rounded. This is one of the things I'm talking about when it comes to shading that flattens the form versus shading that actually makes it look realistic. So look at your sketches right now and ask yourself, is the shading that you're doing just the same across everything, and there's no core shadow, there's no cast shadow on anything? That's what's holding your drawings back. So just make sure that you take care of that. I'm being very picky about this pincer. If that sounds weird, it's just because over the years I've forced myself not to call it a pincher. It's actually not pincher. It's just weird. It's just a strange word. You would think that it's a pincher, like because you pinch, and so do these things, but it's not how you say it. It's so strange. So what I'm doing now is I'm putting in some cool wrinkles and little valleys in the skin to show where the tooth roots may lie underneath all that flesh. Right here on this jaw, the bottom jaw, this is actually going to be in shadow. So as I'm doing this, I'm just going to go straight over the mouth. And then I'm just going to go at another angle. This is going to take some patience because remember, ballpoint pen does not cover the areas the same as a regular pencil. Very light, everybody. We're going to turn this. You may actually have to do this 15 times with the pen until you get what you want. There we go. Okay, I don't want to do any more because it might seem a little too messy. But what I am going to do is I'm just going to indicate each individual root going into the chin. I'm going to darken the edges of the teeth. Very, very tiny serrated edges, man. Scary. Darken the tip of that big one. This is play up on values, just making sure that everything shows up. Yeah, there we go. All right, let's take another look at this, but from farther back. Okay, so the next part is, as promised, I was going to do a little cast shadow here on the ground. I'm going to show you a good way to do that. So look at all the tips of the hands coming out, or appendages, whatever you want to call them. The shadow that is closest to it. So when the shadow spreads from the body to the tip of that, it's going to be darkest at the tip because the object is closest to the ground. I'm going to call it an object. I'm not even going to call it an arm. So that's when it's going to be the darkest. And then as the object moves away from the ground, the light source comes down and there's more bounce light. So it's going to diffuse a lot of the shadow that's in the middle. All right, so if that sounds confusing, I have to be technical about this so you guys understand it. So the shadow closest to the body, that's going to be the darkest because the object's closer to it and less light is able to penetrate underneath that body and light the surface. So what I'm going to do is since I have a pen, it's going to be a little different. I'm going to do tiny little marks. It's almost as if I'm drawing sideways grass petals or just hair marks coming out from underneath the body. This is going to take a little patience. It's different than a pencil because a pencil, you know, when you sketch with the graphite breaks apart. It's a mineral. So it breaks apart and it covers more space. But with ink, you're at the mercy of just the thickness of the tip, and that's it. And it's pretty much the same line thickness as you move out. So once I have these lines coming out here like this, and all I'm doing is I'm starting dark and I'm just kind of brushing into a lighter stroke as I come off of that. I'm going to keep going, all right, until there seems to be a thickness inside that shadow. It's going to take a couple dozen passes, but it's going to pay off, okay? Trust me on that. And as I go, I'm going to get closer to the body and I'm just going to press a little harder and release the pressure as it moves away from the body. And I'm just going to keep compiling this or piling this until I'm satisfied with how it looks. Now, once I get a lot of those in there, and I could spend 20 minutes on that, and I'm going to go a direction that is perpendicular to it. So I'm just going to run the pen down near the body, and that's it. Not out here, but near the body, because I can afford to get darker near the body, not out here. So you don't want to risk it. And I'm going to brush some pen strokes real close to the body. Now these strokes, they're not going to be perfect. So if you find yourself accidentally putting one dark line across there, don't sweat it, folks. It's okay. All right, so here we go, right here. This is where it can look really realistic. Down here, where that meets the ground, it's going to be a little darker. I'm going to fuzzy it up, which means that I'm just going to run over the tip of that with the pen. And I'm going to fade it off towards the body. See the little gap in between that shadow? It's dark here. It's lighter. It gets darker near the tip. Keep that. Don't go over anything else. You're done. Next thing, you're going to brush this to your left, or my left. I don't know what your creatures look like. We're going to keep going and stop. That's it. Now, underneath here, you could get a little darker just because the body is, going past the first claw here. And then once we keep going, there. We don't have to do anything else, and there's a nice contrast. There's the lighter claw right here, and then there's the shadow. Now, it depends on how picky you are and how realistic you want to make this. If you don't like these pen strokes coming off here where it looks like hair, you can get rid of those. I would advise not to, just because you already established where the shadow is. Okay? There's no need to try to perfect this, because what happens is if you start shading out here where it's supposed to be light, you're adding value out here. You're not supposed to. So you're just going to kind of double up and triple up and quadruple up all of the strokes that you want to put, and then you're going to do something wrong and you're going to try to cover it up. Or worst case scenario, if you're doing it with pencil, you're going to try to erase the shadow and you just screwed everything up because you try to shade on top of the erased area. You already took up part of the coating of the paper. So good luck getting it back. All right, now here, the bottom of the chin, there's going to be some more shadow. I didn't do a good job at defining this pincer right here, so I think what I'll do is put in some more serrated edges and then some shadow right there. Now there's going to be skin attached to the inside of the mandible. You can't see it over here. But we're just going to give the illusion that it's there. And then we're going to do the same thing we did here over here. I'm going to put some markings coming off. Notice how I'm still going horizontal. The direction of this shading is the same as this. If you want to make this feel unified and you don't want to go all over the place in different directions, which it's okay if you do that, like if you want to cross hatch or something, that's fine. But to try to keep everything unified, then this is the good way to do it. Just keep everything directional and like one directional. So let's say you keep doing it. Now I have to be careful here. Look what's happening. See the shading on the inside of the jaw? And now look at the shadow, the cast shadow on the ground. It's going to end up being the same thing. But why don't we do this? Inside that corner, let's say that the whole front of this creature is casting most of the shadow down here. Well, guess what, folks? I can get pretty dark in between the pincer and the jaw. I'm going to have to do it methodically, and I'm not going to obsess. Well, I am going to obsess about it, but I'm not going to, try to spread this out anywhere than I have to. Small little controlled bursts coming out of that corner. Just do this carefully. Now look what's happening. That corner now is establishing good contrast between the jaw, the corner, and the pincer. There's 3 different values happening here. This is what you want. I'm not even going to touch that pincer. That pincer right here maybe gets some small little markings, but the light source is hitting that sucker, and probably most of the light is hitting right here. There is going to be a cast shadow underneath the pincer, and this is where you have to be very careful. I like to do longer wispy marks because it allows me to fill larger areas. And remember, this pincer is pretty much floating. It's like it's above the ground. So I want to make sure that when I use the pen and I put that shadow in, it's going to be layered correctly. See how these longer light strokes are just kind of flowing into the back right here? And it's going straight into this shadow. It doesn't look good though. I have to be careful not to put too many streaks in there. Okay. The next thing to watch for. So since the shadow is pretty close to that pincer, all right, it's not going to be really dark, but it's going to be darker right here. And then maybe as the pincer gets higher up on the body, it gets farther away from the ground. Therefore, the shadow isn't as prominent. See how the tip of the shadow is fading off into this? Stop right there. You're good. You're good. There's no point in doing anything else. In here, we want to cast that shadow too. So I'm going to put a little bit of a shadow on the ground. You're going to see most of it right in here. This is kind of a confusing area. I didn't do a good job on this area right here. So I'm just going to edge off what I think it would be. It's almost like this pincer is closer to the mouth than this one. So this one's like opening up. But that's no real excuse. So I just kind of messed up there. See, I have to own my mistakes in this, my perspective mistakes. If you find yourself trying to give excuses for your drawings, that's why you're not getting any better. So I have to check myself sometimes. If I screw up, like I screw up. But if you screw up and you tell yourself, oh, that's just the way it is, or that's just the style that I draw. It's like, no, that's not the style. That's the wrong anatomy or wrong perspective. All right, there we go. I'm not even going to touch this area in here because I don't want to screw up the edge here. I kind of like that. And then what I can do is down here underneath the body, just very carefully put in some shadow of each leg going to it, to the body, that is. Just do it very lightly, everybody. There we go. Okay. And we don't really need to go any more into detail about this shadow. I mean, I could probably spend another 20 minutes on the shadow portion down here, but there's no point because I don't care nearly as much about this part of the body as I do about this. The finishing touch is going to be the inside of that mouth. I need to figure out what is going on with the inside of that mouth. But you can see here, I'm still laying horizontal lines. And I'm going to, put some different directions in here, depending on how long I need the strokes to be. But for the most part, it's going to stay that way. Yeah, that shadow's looking pretty decent. And of course, this can be lit in here. It could be rather a dark corner. This outer pincer is going to be darker than those claws in the background. It's all about layering, everyone. All about layering. And I'll probably have to darken these. There we go. Okay, that's looking a little bit more grounded. So another really cool trick is that when you put a shadow in places that are touching the ground, remember what I said about fuzzying it up? Go on the outside of the pincer, like the tip, and fuzzy that up too. Because it looks like the light and the shadow and everything are dispersed around it, therefore giving the illusion of an actual ground, like the creature's occupying real space. That's what you ultimately want. I probably could put in some shadow in there. I don't want to do too much because that's not really the focal point, but that's an interesting part of the body. Yeah, I just wanted to show that off just a little bit more. Oh, this is so much fun. I hope you guys are having fun too. Hopefully you're learning something about the shading also, and these. Confusing or weak silhouette, anatomy that doesn't support the design, shading the flattened forms, and then texture applied without purpose. So hopefully you're avoiding these. Okay, so over here, I can actually get darker with that leg and darker with that leg. Now, how did I know to come up with that solution? Because the background of the body is really light. So you can get darker with anything laying in front of it, and it creates immediate contrast. It's all about contrast, everyone. That's all it is. It's just knowing when to get darker, when to get lighter, and when to figure out like things that are occupying space. There we go. Okay, now we are talking. Right there. So, as promised, we are jumping into the mouth. Now, how is this going to happen? Well, there's a lot of darkness happening around the teeth and around the gums. And guess what, everybody? It's kind of taken care of already. I'm not going to go in there and add in a black hole for a throat. The throat's back here somewhere. It's not even in there. The hole is going this way. So what I could do is I could just cover up the corners with some very light shading and then go into the middle of the mouth and then go back here, do the same thing. Okay, and then maybe hint at just some random lines inside there, just very light, just to give an indication that there's structure. That's it. That's it. I don't really need to do much else. In the corner here, I could go dark. Sorry about that. Yes, I could go dark in the corner. But look at these teeth down here. See that bottom row of really sharp teeth? I don't want to go dark right next to it. But on the top of the mouth, you better believe I am. And it's going to fade off right into that. Now, here's the cool thing. I have some teeth right here, right there, that are showing up pretty well. I could go in between and kind of fade off that darkness so that you can still see the individual teeth popping out. But I have to make sure that that darkness right there doesn't just abruptly end. Okay. You know what? This is the moment. This is the moment where I have to make a crucial decision as a creature designer. I want everybody to pay attention. So the inside of that mouth right here, you can tell the top and you can tell the bottom. If I put anything else down, it's going to be too much. It's going to be too much. We can still see teeth. They don't have to all be shiny white, pearly white teeth, but we can see where they are. I want to so badly to go back in there and add saliva and add, like, who knows what else inside of the mouth hole. I'm not going to. I'm going to call that done. Maybe go on the outside. Just kind of separate the pincer from that little mandible. Okay. It pains me to say it, folks, but sometimes when you're evaluating your drawings, you want to go forward so badly, but if you do, you're overworking it, and it's not going to turn out good. So we're gonna call this one done. Okay. Now, is this a finished illustration? It could be. Like, it could be finished for presentation's sake, but not for the modeling department. No, if I were to do this for games or something, I would do side view, I would do top view, wouldn't really need to do a rear view. I would do a close-up shot of one of the mandibles, mouth open, mouth closed, attacking, special abilities and stuff. But that's for like a whole sheet. We're not going to do that. I think we're showing off enough here to where we can clearly see it's a big beast, and we don't really need to see anything else. But one thing that I could put down here, why don't we draw ourselves a little human just to show us how big this thing is. Maybe he's got like a sword on the back and he's like, whoa, mother, what is that thing? He's got armor on, and maybe he's like holding a dagger, and he's ready to fight that thing. Put some a little hood on. Kind of looks like a ninja. All right. He's got his battle stance ready, and he doesn't know what's going on, man, but he's ready. He's ready. Okay, he's getting his weapons ready. Got his little pouches on the side. Got his armor. Yeah, he's ready to roll. That's how big it is compared to a human. It's pretty big. All right. So let's recap what we talked about today. Confusing or weak silhouette, anatomy that doesn't support the design, shading that flattens the form, and texture applied without purpose. So we made sure that the silhouette was simple and readable. We made sure that all of the claws, the pincer, and the fins and everything, we gave it purpose. And then shading the flatten or blah, blah. Making sure that the shading does not flatten the form. So, we talked about the coarse shadow right here, and we talked about inside of the mouth and rolling parts, fat deposits and skin and everything. And then texture applied without purpose. So you want to avoid that. So any of the skin wrinkles that I have are because the body is, bending at that spot. We gave tiny little spikes and protectors in here. And there we have it. So thanks again, everybody. You're awesome. Hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. Peace.